Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the Anima and the Animus in the Jungian Psychological Model. All right, so basically what the Anima and the Animus is in the Jungian Psychological Model is that they are two anthropomorphic archetypes, one representing the feminine, that's the Anima, and one representing the masculine, or the Animus. And so the theory goes that in every man there is an unconscious feminine aspect called the Anima, and in every woman there is an unconscious masculine aspect called the Animus. So if you think about it like a yin-yang symbol, it's kind of like the black dot within the white and the white dot within the black. So we each contain our inner opposites, making us psychologically androgynous. And Jung posited that it's very important for us to own our inner opposite traits. So if we're a man, we need to own our feminine side, and if we're a woman, we need to own our masculine side and not repress them away. This is because if the Anima and the Animus are not integrated, they become part of the shadow, and the shadow then gets projected out onto other people. So if we reject our masculine side, we will project that part of ourselves negatively out toward men. Or we will do the opposite with women. If we repress our Anima, it will end up being projected onto all women in the group within our society. The way that Jung saw it was that men were ruled by logos, so the rational, the logical, the intellectual, and women were ruled by eros, or the loving, the caring, the compassionate, the unifying. And because the goal of creating a healthy ego is integration and becoming the most individualistic person and the strongest person that you can, he saw the lack of integration of our inner opposites as something that would stand in the way. So somebody who's undeveloped, their little yin-yang symbol, instead of having a full circle inside of the larger circle, they would have just mere pinpricks, was what he said. Also, with the Anima and the Animus being archetypes, this is part of our ancestral memory. And so even though it might be influenced by the external environment and maybe our Anima or Animus might be associated with a particular type of person or even particular people, it really comes from that internal unconscious. And the Animus and the Anima, when fully integrated, they are actually mediators between the unconscious and spiritual and the conscious mind. And so to have a fully developed Anima or Animus is what we need to basically be complete in ourselves in order that we might access wisdom. Now, of course, a lot of people might think that this interpretation is a bit outdated because in Jung's time, we tended to look at gender in a very binary way, where men were just men and women were just women. And so it was even quite radical for him at the time to suggest that a man develop his feminine side or a woman develop their masculine side. You know, that was pretty radical. But now, you know, with the acceptance of the LGBT community and also kind of more of an acceptance of androgynous expressions, we have to see that maybe gender falls a little bit more on a scale. So my thought on how gender tends to play out is that most people are relatively polar. Let's say 75% of people, let's say women will be mostly feminine with just a little bit of masculine, and men will be mostly masculine with just a little bit of feminine. And if I were to kind of map myself on this, I would say that I'm probably 75% feminine and 25% masculine, if I were going to apply a statistic to it. But of course, we've all met women who are more polarly masculine and men who are more polarly feminine. It's just part of the human expression. Everybody is an individual. And in the time that Jung was working, that was seen as wrong or a dysfunctional thing, whereas now we're starting to recognize it more just as a basic expression of humanity. So what I would say for somebody who's maybe a little bit less traditional, like let's say if you're a woman who's a little bit more masculine or a man who's a little bit more feminine, when you go to think of the Anima or the Animus, think about whatever your polarity happens to be, develop the opposite of that. So, for example, if you are a woman who is polarly masculine in many ways, you want to develop the feminine counterpart of that. Or vice versa with a man who's polarly feminine. You want to develop your inner opposite, your inner masculine side. So it's going to vary so much from person to person. So that's how I would kind of tell you to sort of adapt the principles from back then and the society that Jung lived in to kind of adapt it to how we are now. But another thing to understand about this masculinity-femininity signature within us, this ratio, like a lot of times we think that we can affect this. Like there are sometimes a lot of things that I find on the internet where men are trying to kind of polarize their masculinity and they kind of become the alpha male. And I find this to be a little bit short-sighted because what has to be realized is that our particular signature is actually constant. It can't really be changed. Just like you can't send a gay person to straight conversion camp and have them come out straight, our masculine-feminine signature is pretty tamasic. It does not really change. We can, however, express in different ways from those energies, but those polar energies, that yin and yang within us, it remains the way that it is. It is a preconditioned state. So it's important to understand that you're going to want to be developing something that is there for you already. So you want to become conscious of what is there, and you're not trying to look at like, oh, well, I'm a man, and so I want to be more in touch with my feminine side, so that means I have to be this, and this way that women are. And that's not what I mean. What I mean is that you look for traits that are inherent to you, and then you start to develop them. And I'll go ahead and I'll post up some yin and yang traits in the future so that you can kind of see like, okay, which yin traits do I have, which yang traits do I have, and how do I exalt them to their maximum level? How do I develop those both sides of myself without just trying to put on a caricature of masculinity or a caricature of femininity? Because that will go 180 degrees in the wrong direction that you want to go in. You want to be as authentic as possible when you go to integrate your anima and animus. You don't want to do things that feel unnatural to you, but you want to release resistance to things that do feel natural to you that you might be avoiding because you identify strongly with your gender and maybe want to seem polar in some way or another, like you want to be polarly feminine or polarly masculine. So you have to let go and release resistance to the inner opposite instead of trying to contrive it. So in the same way that it takes a sperm and an egg to make an individual of either gender, we are psychologically androgynous, meaning that we have yin energy and yang energy that are just inherent to us. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you some examples of yang first, because we as a society are a little bit more familiar with yang. This has an implicit tie to the masculine principle and to men. Men are generally more predominantly yang, and we live in a fairly yang-oriented society, and so we're probably quite familiar with these values. Femininity, however, and yin values, we haven't really explored the full depth and breadth of that yet as a society. And so you really have to kind of go digging in yourself to find those, because those are internally based anyway. So they're just a little bit more mysterious in that way and actually take some time to cultivate those values. So we tend to think of femininity as like beauty, maybe long eyelashes, red lips. We might relate it to emotional sensitivity or motherhood, but those are really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what yin is and what the feminine principle is. The masculine principle, those are external things, and so they just are a little bit more obvious naturally, just as the male genitalia is a little bit more obvious how it works than the female genitalia. And I kind of think that maybe these generalizations might have even been based on ancient people just noticing that difference and kind of relating the internal to femininity and the external to masculinity. But they are also just a little bit more what comes to mind right away, like the things that are basically your doing and transforming nature, the actions that you take. Femininity has more to do with being and the internal experience. So yang, which has an implicit tie to the masculine principle, is everything external. It's the doing nature, purpose, goal setting, having an agenda and bringing that onto the world, personal agency and autonomy, rationality, logic, intellect, logos, individuality, transformation and change, stoicism, analytical prowess, discernment, direction, and ability to commit and pull through with things. The Yang traits are ones that are clear and evident and have a lot to do with movement. So some common Yin traits are being, compassion, awareness of the present moment, connection to the unconscious mind, embracing paradox and cognitive dissonance, exploring the mysterious and non-rational, connection to wisdom, emotional intelligence, unconditional love, and respect for Earth and its creatures. So this is the dark, this is the mysterious, this is the stillness. You could even say that meditation is a Yin undertaking because you're taking time to be still and to just be. So that is a feminine activity. So I want to remind you again that these aren't men's and women's traits respectively. What they are is they are feminine and masculine traits. They are in every single person in varying degrees. So everyone has a capacity to develop these traits within themselves. It's not mutually exclusive, and in fact, according to Jungian theory and my personal opinion, it's quite destructive to repress away your inner opposite because it undermines your authenticity and creates a very dense shadow. But there's a lot of fear relative to integrating this inner opposite side because socially, the things that are valued more are polar masculinity and polar femininity. And so very often, let's say if a man really values having a masculine persona, he might be tempted to repress away the feminine in himself and even repudiate it in other people. And then also, when it comes to the inner masculine in a woman, she might have a tendency to repress those away because she wants to seem more feminine and more attractive and more socially acceptable. And so there are some boons outwardly to repressing away this thing, but you want to resist those boons. You want to detach from any outcome out here because our intention is to be psychologically whole and to really have a deep inner understanding of ourselves. And any kind of joy that we might get from some masculine facade or some feminine facade is really just, it doesn't in any way compared to the ability to be completely authentic and to be a fully developed individual. All right, so let's look a little bit at the anima. So how does this present itself in men and masculine women? So basically, the anima, when it's healthy, it will present itself in a way that is fully integrated. And so a man acting from a fully developed anima will be able to show compassion and caring and unity, and he won't have to always be logical and stoic. He'll be more authentic with himself. He'll be honest about his emotions, and he'll be a lot more emotionally intelligent and well-developed as a person. A man who does not have a well-developed anima will basically be under the control of Anima Possession, and I'll talk a lot about that in just a few minutes when I'm done talking about these basic traits of what the anima presents itself as. So Jung thought that the anima presented itself in 4 main stages and having a pretty singular face. So the first stage, the very most undeveloped form of the anima, is the Eve-based anima, where women are only seen and related to as sexual objects, things to have sex with, basically. And, basically his feminine side is not going to be very well developed, and he's going to have a lot of issues with repression and with anima possession. He'll also have a tendency to see women as largely non-virtuous and sort of like pulling all the strings. These women have control over him through his baser sexual drives toward women. A man who's ruled by the Eve archetype will have little to no direction in life, and he won't be able to follow his emotional guidance system. He'll have self-doubt, and he'll be kind of a spineless person. He won't be able to have courage because those things of the heart come from the anima. All right, the next stage of anima development is Helen, just like Helen of Troy. And in this stage, women can be seen as having agency in the world, like women can be seen as like being able to do things, but they're still largely seen as non-virtuous and kind of pulling the strings, and this type of man will feel like he doesn't have a whole lot of control over his life either, because the anima still has that pull over his personality. And while a man ruled by Helen might be able to get enough power to make his life go in a particular direction, there'll be a lack of imagination or a lack of heart to it, because the connection to the anima is also the connection to creativity, as creativity is part of the feminine principle. All right, the third stage of anima development is the Mary stage, and this is based off of the Virgin Mary. And in this stage, women can be seen as having like free agency and are seen as virtuous, but only virtuous. So it's kind of like a sacralization of women that's seen projected onto everything. So there's like a really rigid idea of what's good and virtuous, and it's kind of steeped in dogma. So this man might be able to do things and to have a decent relationship with women, but he does not see women as being fully formed people. And he also kind of shies away from things that are more authentic to him emotionally, because he does have all of these dogmatic judgments placed over reality. There are things that are maybe more what he would want to do, but then he has like these ideas that this I should not do. And it's like a big brick wall there. This stage, while having a higher level of development, doesn't grant you any access to the unconscious mind. In order to do that, you have to be a lot less dogmatic and very open-minded. And so a man ruled by Mary, might be okay in the external world, but internally, he's not going to be able to access the wisdom. That only comes from full integration of the anima, which is the fourth stage. So the fourth stage is called Sophia, and Sophia is basically the embodiment of wisdom. And when a man is fully integrated his feminine side, he'll be able to view women as unique individuals who are capable of both good and bad things. He will see a woman as a partner, as somebody to be related to as a human being, a fully fleshed out individual. But even more importantly for him, internally, he'll have the access to the unconscious mind, because Sophia is the mediator between spirit and matter and the unconscious and conscious mind. And so in being able to be in touch with that and to become one with that and integrate that, then he's able to access wisdom, and he's able to apply his logos to the feminine eros and basically be able to create and to act from that space. And so you see, integrating the feminine side has a lot of boons that we're not really super conscious of. And I think in our culture particularly, and this is getting a bit better in recent years, but there's this sort of urging for men, be a man, be super masculine, put on that face, never show your emotions. Don't do anything that women do, because that lowers you. And unfortunately, it's very, very sad, because very many men can't do the thing that's going to bring them to a greater form of wholeness and reintegration. And so these are cultural attitudes that we want to slough off, because we want to make sure that everyone can reintegrate their inner opposite. But of course, if somebody does not integrate their inner yin qualities and develop them and make them fully whole within the person, then that part is going to go into the shadow, and our shadows will get really, really dense. And what will happen is called Anima Possession. And with Anima Possession, that's kind of like the undeveloped Eve form of the archetype that I mentioned before. The men or masculine women will feel controlled by women, and it will feel like all the women outside hold the cards, and that basically they won't be able to do anything about it. So this type of man will be moody, sulky, irrational. He won't have any direction in life. He won't be able to set any goals and make them come through. He might experience like feelings of misogyny and a feeling of deep unfairness, like why was I born a man? He might also have issues with female family members, like his mother or his wife or his sisters. So these problems definitely reflect themselves out on the environment. He'll also have trouble with being creative or being imaginative, and he will basically be disconnected from his emotions. And so when a person gets disconnected from their emotions, then things get very fuzzy and you don't know which direction you want to go in. And life becomes just this repetitive action of going around and around and around and never being able to really fully commit to a path, and it just basically being in a state of constant chaos and confusion. So how would somebody integrate the anima so that we avoid the potential for anima possession? All right, so the first thing, and this comes right at the forefront, is to accept and value and honor your emotions. See your emotions as being valid, because the emotions are so much about what motivates us. So even if we ignore them, they're still there. Our emotions don't go away just because we don't want them to be there, because we ignore them. They are actually messages from the unconscious mind. And when they can't get proper expression or the needs don't get met, that's when we're dealing with an anima possession. You'll also want to focus on developing yourself internally in a way that might not be super obvious to the external world. So you might want to get a meditation practice going, or a contemplation practice, or some sort of introspection. You want to develop your nurturing side, your loving side. You want to, if you feel like you care about someone, express that. So in order to do this, you'll really want to chunk out masculine social expectations, that masculine persona that so many people value. You want to chunk that out completely and get really honest with what's really true for you. Because to be in touch with the anima is to be in touch with your own authenticity. Also, you may want to talk to women that you normally would not talk to. A lot of times, men with an undeveloped anima will only see women as sexual objects. So talk to some older women or something like that, somebody who's out of your age range that you would never think of as being a romantic partner in any way, and get to know them. Or get to know, just make friends with somebody who has children. Like maybe they have like a little girl that you can see as somebody who is an individual. So any attempt to see the opposite gendered person, or the same gendered person if you happen to be a masculine woman, as a whole integrated person, that's going to be very, very positive, because many men who are stuck with anima possession have lost the ability to do this. Also, if you're someone who engages in a lot of intellectual bypassing or spiritual bypassing, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start taking action on the things in your mind. So if you're caught in a loop of fantasies, as men with anima possession often do, or if you find that you just spend a lot of time alone, just like kind of going over and going over and going over the same old things, then you're going to want to take action on your thoughts, as long as they're positive. Make things happen for yourself. Show yourself that you are capable of directionality and forward movement. So you want to think about integrating the anima sort of like adding salt to a dish. It makes it taste better. It enhances what's already there. So if you're a person who's concerned about being more masculine and you're resistant to accepting your feminine side, think about this like the salt of that, the enhancer to your masculinity, because you have to think of the feminine as being the soil from which your masculinity grows. And in the same way, a woman's animus, that is the soil from which her femininity grows. All right, so now that we've talked quite a bit about the anima, let's talk about the animus and how this presents itself in women and feminine men. All right, so unlike the anima, which has a fairly singular image, the animus has a multifaceted kind of image that can basically reflect out onto various men that a woman might know. So the main thing about the animus is that it has the particular qualities of the man before the personality associated with it. So a woman who has a well-integrated animus is going to be somebody who has opinions of her own, who has direction in life, who can pursue goals, who can take her emotions and then be able to logically and rationally understand them, to take that logos element and to become more aware of what's internal to her. So basically, it allows for a greater degree of analytical prowess to integrate the animus for a woman. And it also helps her have direction in life. So just like men have 4 stages to develop their anima, women have 4 main stages as well. So the first one is the man of mere physical power. It's like the first stage of animus development in a woman. And so basically, this type of woman isn't going to have a lot of control over her own life. She's going to be looking for this strong, tall man that's going to protect her and provide for her. And basically, she's going to be like this damsel in distress and really just kind of a decorum to his own physical power. The second level of animus development in a woman is the man of action or romance. So in this, like, women will see men as people who are capable of, setting forward plans. And that's what she'll be searching for in a mate or in any kind of male companionship or friendship. And she'll see that as the quality of the masculine. And so while she might have her own preferences and opinions, she's still going to be looking for a man to provide that for her. So she'll basically just kind of be following along with whatever her significant other does, or if she's younger, her father, so she'd basically just be following whatever that external example is. All right, the third level of animus development in a woman is seeing the man as professor, clergyman, or orator. So this is a man of word and opinion. And so in this, a woman can assert her own worldview, and she has very particular things that, she wants to have happen and that she can now make happen in getting to this stage of anima development. So she has opinions, she has worldviews, she can start to make things happen, but she does not quite yet have that connection to the animus, which, just like the anima, is the mediator between the unconscious and the conscious mind. He is the connection that allows her to bridge forth from the feminine wisdom that she naturally has and to bring it out into life. So the fourth stage is the fully integrated animus. And so this is the inner Hermes, the messenger of the gods. And so in her developing her ability for analysis and having a worldview and direction and preferences and having a fully developed persona and ego, now she can take that down into the feminine wellstream of the unconscious mind, which is part of the feminine principle, and she can start to manifest from that, and she can bring her creativity into fruition as opposed to it just flowing chaotically within herself. Now, on a personal note, I have a very, very strong connection to my inner animus. And in fact, whenever I do the ideation for my videos and for my various things where I contemplate things, there's always an audience for that. So I have this tendency, I kind of like talk things out in my own head or sometimes out loud, that's true. And basically, I always imagine that I'm talking to an older male authority figure that I know from out in life. And usually this has been a professor or some kind of teacher, maybe back when I was in high school and middle school, or a boss of mine, but always somebody who's a little bit older than me that I can just kind of tell my ideas and insights to. And in these little fantasies, in these like bouts of active imagination, he sits there and he listens, and somehow that helps me bring out whatever insight that I have. And so there's always an audience. And in fact, you could even say that right now I'm sort of doing the same thing. I have this inner audience of various male authority figures that I speak to. And I mean, it might sound a little bit strange, but it is very, very helpful for me in solidifying my ideas and opinions and insights. Now, of course, a woman who does not have a highly developed animus, that animus is going to be expressed anyway. It doesn't go away. It is part of you. It will always find expression. But then it gets expressed as an animus possession, which is part of shadow masculinity. And this type of woman, it has to know everything, or a feminine man that has to know everything. So basically, this is a very rigidity of opinions. Instead of assertiveness, which is a sign of the healthy animus, it's aggressiveness. Everything has to be just so, and there's a constant judgment, particularly to other women. And, everybody kind of has to basically deal with this type of person because they're always talking and interjecting their views onto everything, and everything has to be just right. It's a very dogmatic kind of person who's dealing with animus possession. Another thing that happens is that these type of people tend to get cut off from life and really out of touch with their emotions, and basically their whole focus is on manipulating so that material things come to them. And they're not able to really have relationships with people because they're so blocked off from the emotional side of themselves. They have no heart. And there was even one source that I saw that was called the Animus possessed woman as the ball busting bitch. And so it's basically somebody who has to have complete control of everything. So that's what animus possession is. And so how do we avoid that? How do we integrate the animus? Well, what we want to do as women is we want to start to get a really clear sense of what our values are. So if we are a very emotional person naturally, what we want to do is we want to start applying our thoughts to this. We want to start analyzing those. Like, what does this mean? Like, what exactly do I want? Get really, really clear about what you want and what you need out of life. And then become a person of action and strategy. Set forth goals to follow. So, for example, if you have just this kind of unnamed emotion, find out what that is. Find out how that's going to be leading you in life. And then choose that direction. Go in the direction of where your emotions tell you to go. And be willing to set firm boundaries for yourself and to be assertive. And if things don't feel right to you, say, hey, that does not feel right to me. Or if you really enjoy something, be willing to express, oh, I really like this. Or if you don't like something, say, I really don't like this. Feel free to have opinions separate from the group or separate from social expectations of femininity. Also, it's important to withdraw any dependence that you have on a man for your own self-worth. So a lot of times women dealing with animus possession, their primary thing that they value is being attractive to men. And so that can't be your primary value. You want to put most of your value in developing yourself as an individual and individuating and becoming the most highly developed person that you can as a person. You'll also want to develop your own unique leadership qualities, and oftentimes feminine people tend to lead differently than masculine people, and so there's sort of almost a reinvention of leadership qualities that has to occur, and they have to be based in your own personal values, which only you know. So it's the ability for independence, for autonomy, for self-agency to make your life really go. All right, so now that we've talked about the Anima and Animus, I'll just kind of throw in my 2 cents about this. So basically, ideally, you wouldn't even be thinking about how masculinity and femininity is presenting itself in your personality. You would simply want to just be authentic and not worried about whether something is labeled as feminine or something is labeled as masculine. However, very often, our cup gets filled up with all sorts of indoctrinations and beliefs how a woman should be and how a man should be or how people should not be. And so in order to do this, I recommend you look through a list of yin and yang traits and try to find the ones that fit best with you and try to develop those to the umpteenth degree to become a highly developed individual no matter what your gender is. But whatever that might mean, don't let a concept define you. You are actually an infinite thing, and you are so much more than your particular gender identity, no matter what it is. So that's all I really have for now. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead, click the like button below and subscribe. Also, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought, and share this video with a friend. But for now, that's all I have. And until next time, keep becoming more you.